In this tutorial, we're going to talk about the difference between opaque and transparent paints, when you should use each type, what are the benefits and the drawbacks of each one, and what are the properties that make them up. We're going to go into a little bit of the science with that today. Before I get into this tutorial, I need to give a shout out to Neil Boson, who won this painting of mine in the Beat Tutorial giveaway. Anyway, Neil, we'll get with you, and I'm going to get this thing in the mail. Congratulations, brother. These sheets of paper are opaque, and no matter how thick they get, they are still always going to be that same yellow color. Transparency sheets, like transparent paint, light travels through, bounces off the surface behind it, and comes back, and your eye sees that shaded color. If you mix and match transparent sheets, you create an entirely new color, and the same can happen with your pigments. Many of us that have been painting a while are guilty of saying that transparent paints will always get darker as you build them up until they can get almost black, and that's not necessarily true. One look at this bottle tells you no matter how thick you paint it, these transparent paints, these are transparents. This is transparent createx illustration. It is never going to turn almost black. However, dyes which are truly transparent, this is a yellow dye, yellow candy. It does get very, very dark. It's more accurate to say that even your opaque paints aren't 100% opaque, and your transparent paints aren't 100% transparent. There's levels of opacity to your paint, and that has to do with a term called refractive index.
Refractive index.
Refractive index.
I'm going to let you Google that term and not get too bogged down into that, but suffice it to say that the medium in which your pigments are mixed in have a lot to do with how opaque or how much covering power they have versus how transparent. Light peachy tone I've got here, the reason I'm spraying this, gonna go really, really hard with this, and the reason that I'm doing that is to show you no matter how much paint I put on there, it's never going to get any darker or change color. Now I'm going to use the same in a transparent, a close match, but you have to use a very, very gentle hand, and that color is burnt sienna mixed with red violet. The opaque one is mixed with a lot of white. The transparent one is burnt sienna and red violet. Now, if I continue to spray, you're going to notice how much darker it gets, and you have to have a very controlled hand to be able to not go too dark. And then if you were just to spray that out, you'll see the color that it's going to become right there. In this clip I'm about to show you, you're going to see me spray a transparent paint on the bottom, and then you're going to see me spray an opaque paint on the top, and then you're going to see me spray an opaque paint in the middle. And then we're going to look at that, and if you notice where the transparent paint was blended on the bottom, it barely affected anything that was darker than itself. A little bit on the blue kind of pushed it a little bit towards the green edge, but the yellow opaque paint on the top started pushing all that to that yellow tone. But if you look at the edges, you'll notice how those are getting very muddy and dirty looking. And in the middle, that's why I put the stripe down the middle. The more you try to gradient out, and the more you try to blend your opaques that are lighter color on top of a dark color, the dirtier that look is going to get and the muddier it's going to get. You can lay your transparent on top of a darker color. You can't just go hog wild, but if you're laying your transparent on top of a darker color, it will have very little effect and keep your work looking clean. Those of you who saw my Joker tutorial saw me use a transparent paint on the eyebrow so that I could cover over all of those textures without obliterating them, and also to keep a lighter color from going on top of a dark and making it muddy, which is what happens when an opaque color is, a lighter opaque color is laid on top of a darker opaque. If you watched my Painted Lady tutorial, you saw me use transparent paints on the lips to cover over the lips with color without obliterating the textures. You also saw me use a violet around the nose, both to give it a violet texture on the end and to let it blend with the yellow textures in the middle to create a skin tone. You also would have seen me use a lighter opaque color on that painted lady tutorial, where I'm using it in smaller, finer lines to create a lighter color over a darker color, where I didn't have to worry about a lot of overspray. My regular viewers also would have seen me use all opaques on the silver portion of the lighter flame tutorial. On the silver portion of that, I worked light to dark with opaque paints to cap the darkness of the color. So instead of using a black transparent, I used a very dark gray so that I didn't overpower that color, and I was able to cover up any little mistakes I made because the color will always remain the same. Now, you probably already know that you can blend your opaques as well. So if you wanted to use an opaque paint, but you wanted to work a gradient, you can still use an opaque paint. Just be aware that it's only going to get to a certain color and then it's going to stay that way. Opaque paints are really great if you're going to cover something up and you need a really crisp edge and using a shield. If you're going darker on top of light, it's going to cover that edge and completely fill that void, and you have a control in it's going to reach the maximum opacity, and that's where you're going to be. The transparent paints are really good at being able to blend in a little bit better as long as you work controlled with them, and you can spray very, very lightly so that you can mix and match colors a lot better. You can use a transparent paint light on top of a dark. Say you have a very complex series of lines, say like with dragon scales where you got a lot of dark lines in there, you can use your transparents to not wipe out the black lines with overspray while you're shading inside the dragon scale. It also should be noted that transparent paints tend to look a lot more vibrant than opaque paints. That's not going to give your picture vibrancy. You need to understand there's a lot more to vibrant pictures than just vibrant paints. Contrast and things like that all take effect in your painting, and the total composition of your painting is affected by multiple things. However, transparent paints do tend to be a little bit more vibrant, and when you layer a transparent paint on top of a lighter opaque paint, even more vibrancy. So
hey, you. Still. Yeah, you. If you're confused, remember, comments down below are a great place to ask questions, and I'll clarify anything. Remember that this is not going to be an all-encompassing information. You're going to have to watch some other videos as well to get a total grasp on all the capabilities that you can have with these paints.
So my firm recommendation usually is when somebody's beginning and they're just getting started in airbrushing, I usually recommend that they start out with a transparent set and an opaque white and a big bottle of black. And because you can add a little opaque white to your transparent paints and make them more opaque. It's a lot harder to make your opaque paints transparent. Yes, you can thin them down with a transparent base, but they're still going to have some of that property of the mediums and the fillers and things that are in the paint that give them coverage power. So it's going to be a little bit muddier than if you're working with a more transparent paint. Guys, I'm Bill Kennedy with W. Leon Artistry. I hope you got something out of this video today. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you did not, I always tell people you can throw the thumbs down. That one works just fine too. We appreciate y'all for coming by here. Remember, if you like what you're seeing, you got to hit that subscribe button. You got to turn on the notification bell. And then you still have to turn on YouTube notifications so you'll know what's coming up, because we got videos coming out every single week. But anyway, we appreciate y'all for stopping by here. Y'all have a good one. Bye. That was horrible. Before I go any further, on the 500, that was horrible too. Before I get into this tutorial, I need to give a shout out to my friend